Come on, Rockfin. Any day now. Oh, Rockfin takes so long. Okay. Always a delay with Rockfin. All right. Thank you. Let's go. All right, let's go ahead and get this party started. Welcome to the Sabby Sab Show on RBN. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Interesting stories that we have today. I want to go ahead and put up that thumbnail. I did just notice my name is not on here. I don't know what happened. 1 second. I guess I can't change that now. That's weird. Huh. Anyway, you guys know who I am. But welcome. Shout out to those of you watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different because it's been brought to my attention that I talk about like Richard Wolff economic update oftentimes like on my channel. And it was brought to my attention recently that I haven't actually talked about Richard Wolff on RBN. So considering that we actually just had that labor summit, this is a great opportunity to have that discussion. So let me go ahead and put the thumbnail up here. This is what we're going to be discussing today. So Richard Wolff says that unions and worker co-ops should team up. Now, I've talked about this oftentimes on my channel, but there's more recent information. And plus, I'm going to connect this to the labor summit that we just had. And then also, I'm going to be discussing the gas shortage in Germany. I don't know if everyone's aware of that, but we will be heading into winter pretty soon. And they're already saying that Germany is going to have issues this winter because of the gas shortage that they have. So we're going to talk about both of those. But first and foremost, I want to go ahead and shout out our RBN fundraiser for labor and bills. You guys really love our thumbnails. Aaron creates these. I do not have Aaron's talent. And so if you could help us continue to pay Aaron, we have a Venmo and a Cash App. So if you want to donate to our Venmo, it's at Revolutionary Blackout. And if you want to donate to our Cash App, it's $ mutual aid forever. So we do shout out the fundraisers so we can pay for labor. But yeah, so much to discuss. We're going to get started with the story with Germany. So Germany is having a gas shortage. This is not new, but there has been recent news that this is actually going to get worse for Germany come this winter. Now, how is this all connected to the war in Ukraine? If we go back to the Nord Stream pipeline bombing, when that happened, that really hurt countries like Germany that really did depend on that gas from Russia. So they've been dealing with this since that happened, but they are now predicting that it is going to get worse. So I want to go ahead and start with this clip here from the BBC. It's called "How Did Germany End Its Reliance on Russian Gas?" Now, I want to play this video first because it's quite interesting. This video was released 8 months ago, and here we are today. So I just want to show you the contrast here, where they were 8 months ago and where Germany is now. So it does not look good for Germany. But let's go ahead and get started with this clip here.
When Russia started to restrict its supplies of gas to Western Europe, one of the most affected countries was Germany. The country is heavily dependent on the fuel and initially struggled to find a replacement. But Germany has managed not only to replenish its stored gas, but has also built its first terminal for imported liquefied natural gas. And it took just 200 days to do it. Jenny Hill reports. Germany, a country seeking independence. Once powered by cheap Russian gas, it needs a new supply. So German engineers have built this in record time, the country's first terminal for the import of liquefied natural gas. In a few weeks' time, tankers from all over the world will deliver gas here in liquid form. At the terminal, it'll be converted back into gas, piped into the network, and on into German homes and businesses.
Notice how hopeful they sounded back then? This was just 8 months ago when they figured out that they actually found a solution to this issue in reference to depending on gas from Russia. But things have definitely changed.
And German industry is depending on it. Take this brick factory, which relies on gas. How else to get the kiln to the necessary 1200 degrees Celsius?
If we don't have any gas, we have to shut down the oven. It's not just the politicians' fault. Industry wanted the Russian gas contracts. The hope, of course, is that at some point we can work with green hydrogen, but that takes time.
Germany's an economic heavyweight. What this country wants, it often gets.
And this is also showing you the difference of where Germany is today, because I actually reported on this, I think it was a month or two ago, that Germany actually declared that they are now in a recession. And so you'll see in this video, 8 months ago, they said that Germany is an economic, powerhouse. That used to be the case. That's not the case anymore. So this just goes to show you how quickly things have changed since this war with Russia and Ukraine.
And its newfound appetite for liquefied natural gas is intensifying global demand.
You have a whole bunch of countries, emerging economies, notably, that are priced out of the market and can no longer source the energy that they need, notably the ones that have less of a purchasing power than the Europeans have, and notably the Germans.
Germans had braced themselves for a bleak winter, but gas stores are now full. Blackouts unlikely this Christmas. The LNG that'll flow into Wilhelmshaven will supply 8% of the country's needs. But what of Germany's ambitions for a greener future? In the town hall, they've grand plans. The LNG terminal will one day also handle green hydrogen. That, they hope here, is just the beginning.
Ganz viel dieser Energiewende, die wir jetzt hinkriegen müssen, damit wir überhaupt
so much of the energy transformation that we need to achieve so that our planet has an inhabitable climate in 50 or 100 years' time. So much of what's necessary here in Germany will happen in and through Wilhelmshaven.
das wird hier über Wilhelmshaven laufen.
Okay, so they sounded pretty hopeful, I would say. Wouldn't you say that they sounded pretty hopeful? But that was then. And now we are moving to a different time. And I want to go ahead and share this article here. This was released, I believe it was just the other day, this article came out. Let me go ahead and make this bigger. From Bloomberg, warning people what is to come for Germany. And we're not talking about Germany is going to deal with this gas shortage issue just this winter. They're actually saying that this is going to be an issue for years to come. So I want to go ahead and share this by Bloomberg, because I hope that more people would talk about this, because this could be a warning for other countries as well. Oh, why is it doing that? Hold on, guys. What the? Oh my God. Really? They didn't do this before. Hold on. Let me find another one. Or I could just, let me just sign up. This is crazy. I already read this article. They want me to sign up everything. No, I'm not paying for that. Sorry. Hold on, guys. I hate when they do that. Like, you'll get to read the article, and then when you go to read it again, then they're like, you got to sign up for it. Like, bump that, man. I'm not paying you to read one article. Let's go to this one. You can usually just take the title and pull it up elsewhere. So that's what I'm doing now. Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and share again. Hate when that happens. You know, you got to pay for like all these articles now. It's really just ridiculous. Anywho, let's dive into this. Germany to face risk of gas shortages until early 2027. Storage operators warn. So you just saw that video where they were very hopeful about finding alternative sources in reference to gas in Germany. They seem to be really, excited about that. We found a solution. That was 8 months ago. Now they are saying that they're still going to deal with this issue of gas shortages, but now they're saying until early 2027. Now, what does that mean for people in Germany? What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to heat their homes? Gas isn't just, you don't just use gas if you have a gas stove. You need gas. They need gas to actually heat their homes. So what are people in Germany supposed to do? Let's continue. Germany will continue to face a risk of severe gas shortages until early 2027, unless it adds more fuel infrastructure to smooth out potential strains from cold weather. Additional liquefied natural gas terminals, storage capacity, or pipeline connections are needed to ensure sufficient supplies sooner. The country's gas shortage operators group, INES, said on Thursday. For now, stockpiles are developing positively and are nearly 90% full, but a cold winter could still put Germany's energy security at risk. So what this means is that, let's say Germany has a mild winter this year, they'll probably be okay. But if they don't have a mild winter and it is really cold, the colder it is, and also the length of the cold weather is going to matter as well, the more energy they're going to consume. Now, I want to connect this to the UK, because a couple of months ago, I talked about how people in the UK actually had to leave their homes and go to facilities called warm banks just to get warm because they couldn't afford the heating bill. They couldn't afford the gas. This same issue could happen in Germany, where people may not be able to afford it or they just run out of the gas. So what are people going to do to stay warm? It's a very real issue. Let's go on to say the danger of gas shortages during cold temperatures remains and will continue to accompany us until winter 2026-2027, unless further infrastructure measures are taken. Again, that's coming from the INES head, Sebastian. Europe's largest economy was among the hardest hit by Russia's curtailment of gas shipments last year. I want to point this out here for a second, Russia's curtailment. Because remember, this is Bloomberg, and I think you can pretty much put it together that they co-signed State Department talking points. So they're still trying to pin this on how many more articles need to be written, how much more investigative journalism needs to be done to show that Russia didn't blow up their own pipeline. It makes absolutely no sense, but they're still trying to put this on Russia. This is ridiculous. Europe's largest economy was among the hardest hit by Russia's curtailment of gas shipments last year, but has managed to build up alternative supplies thanks to a combination of mild winter weather and reduced consumption, as well as a rapid build out of LNG terminals on its coast. Some of those have faced local opposition. If very cold temperatures were to hit Germany during the upcoming winter, shortages could already be depleted by the end of next January. And that's according to the INES analysis. So I just want to highlight here, they said thanks to a combination of a mild winter. So they were lucky this time around because they had a mild winter. That doesn't mean that's going to continue. And if that doesn't continue, particularly this winter, they're going to be in trouble. And if they're in trouble, then the UK is probably going to be in trouble again too. If you think about all the people that have been affected because of this proxy war by NATO, the people being hit the hardest, the countries being hit the hardest, it's not Russia. The countries being hit the hardest are not even involved. They're not the ones on the battlefield. They're not the ones that are fighting. When we talk about countries in Africa actually dealing with starvation issues because they're depending on resources like fertilizer to come through, they're not involved in this conflict. In fact, countries in Africa chose to remain neutral in reference to the war in Ukraine. But these are the countries that are being hit the hardest. Russia, for the most part, and I'll talk about this tonight when I get into the Jimmy Dore, Marianne Williamson interview about Russia and Ukraine. Russia, believe it or not, even though they have sanctions on them, economically, they're still doing fine. So other people are being affected by this. So I ask this question again, how long is this war supposed to continue? How many more people have to struggle, have to suffer just to feed the military industrial complex? Because it's all about money. That's what this is really about. So they're willing to let people just starve out here? They're really willing to let people freeze? They don't care. And that includes the US government. And I say this because look at what just happened. I'll talk more about this weekend. They just approved another, billion? I think it's $24 billion they want to send to Ukraine. Where's the money to help the people in Hawaii who are trying to escape the fires? We always come last. And that's what I want people to understand. We're last. Where's the money and the effort and the support for people in East Palestine, Ohio? The president of the United States hasn't even visited, till this day, has not even visited East Palestine, Ohio. Now you have people in Maui trying to escape fires. There's over 1,000 people that are unaccounted for in Hawaii. But the Biden administration's response is, let's send more billions to Ukraine. I think the American people need to start asking for, and it's going to have to come from us because Congress is useless. I think the American people are going to have to start asking for accountability and receipts in reference to the money that has already gone to Ukraine and the money that's going there now and in the future. We should all have access to that information. This should not be a secret. The Pentagon should not be failing audits multiple times. We should know where our money, our taxpayer money, is going. And if the US government can't tell us that, then we have a problem. We have a real problem. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat, and then I have another one that I want to show you really quick. This is just, it's crazy. It's crazy. Rick says, cheap energy made Germany a powerhouse. It's history now. Child of God said, yeah, Russia's good. Exactly. Wary, Canada wants a piece of that LNG action as well. I heard about that. Eric says, it's all about cutting into Russia's energy sales, forcing Germany to shift to buying US gas. Isn't that terrible what they're doing to the people? Whoever said, well, they're willing to let people actually die in the hot part of the war. So that's a good point. Ashura says Jackson Hinkle predicted this, that only the EU will suffer even with the sanctions. And by the way, they're supposed to be the US allies. So if people in Germany can't heat their homes this winter, is the US government going to step in and help support them? Or are they going to force Germany to start buying US gas? And if that does happen, Are people in Germany going to wake up and say, no, what the hell is this? And maybe then people will be more critical of this conflict, more critical of it. This is a hot mess. Javier says, even here in Puerto Rico, we feel it. In Obama's last month, he named the finance minister of the Ukraine to the Fiscal Control Board. Natalie Jaroszewski was involved with Governor Ricky Rossello. I did not know that. That's interesting, Javier. Uh-huh. The Working Reading Room says Germany has a lot of U.S. bases. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I spent most of my childhood in Germany. There are a lot of U.S. bases in Germany. Ashura says the USA is going to treat EU peeps like they do Americans. I could see that too. I could see that too. What's this, Mark? Why did Marianne pick the example she brought up about Ukraine? It seems so random that she must have her responses memorized. Well, I'll get into that tonight. Like that interview was yikes, not good for her. Not good for her at all. But I could see what you mean by that it seems like the responses were memorized. That could have been the case. Let me go to this other video. I want to make sure I get this in too as well, because we're going to spend most of the time talking about Professor Richard Wolff, because he has a lot to say, as you can imagine. I was just making sure I had this video. This one by Vox. I want to go into this one by Vox. There's some things in here I might have to debunk, but I want to show this clip here from Vox about why Germany is hooked on Russian gas. Let's listen to this. Let me go ahead and share this clip here and dive right in. Here we go.
April 8th, 2022, the European Union issued a fifth round of sanctions against Russia.
And, ladies and gentlemen, I think that measures on oil and even gas will also be needed sooner or later.
Did you get that? Even gas will also be needed sooner or later. In other words, not now. Since the war in Ukraine began, the EU has imposed sanctions that restrict the flow of Russian money and goods. They've targeted banks, companies, individuals. But natural gas remains untouched. The EU gets nearly a quarter of its energy from gas, and nearly half of it comes from Russia, the world's largest gas exporter. Russia delivers the vast majority of its gas to Europe through this network of pipelines. And as the EU's largest economy, nobody buys more of it than Germany.
Yep.
Since the invasion of Ukraine began, Germany has paid Russia about 220 million euros a day for gas. Germany uses gas to heat more than 20 million homes and to power a lot of the country's industry. And Germany's government has spoken out against sanctions that would limit the flow of it.
It's not possible to cut the gas supplies.
But with every payment Germany makes to Russia's state-owned natural gas company, it's also paying for Russia's war.
So you see how they decided to spend that? Let's remember that Germany actually backed Joe Biden when he decided to send tanks into Ukraine. Germany supported that, not the people of Germany, but the administration supported it. Even I think the Green Party of Germany supported it, and they decided to send Leopard tanks into Ukraine. So you see how they tried to spin that. I told you there's a couple things we're going to have to interject here, but I just wanted to say that so you understand that like it's not the way that they're trying to put it, that Germany 100% backed NATO and backed the US decision, especially in reference to sending them weapons.
So how did Germany become so dependent on Russia for something as vital as their energy supply? And why can't they quit? Germany was at the literal center of the Cold War. After World War II, a fortified border separated independent West Germany from East Germany and other Soviet satellite states.
This is where the Berlin Wall comes in. Just FYI, and remember, after the Berlin Wall, it was decided, the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was decided that NATO would not expand to the east. So NATO was not supposed to expand past this point. And so that's why when people say it's a NATO proxy war, it is because NATO decided to expand anyway. So that's a problem.
World War II had left Germany in ruins. But by the 1950s, West Germany was experiencing a remarkable economic recovery. German industries like steel prospered, but they needed more energy to power their growing economy. Meanwhile, over here in Western Siberia, the Soviet Union had just discovered huge natural gas reserves. They had a network of pipelines to supply major Soviet cities, but extending their pipelines to potential customers in Europe would be a huge infrastructure project. Then, in 1969, West Germany elected a chancellor with a new foreign policy called Ostpolitik, focused on bringing the two sides closer together through dialogue and deals. Energy provided a great opportunity, and West Germany and the Soviet Union struck a deal. The Soviet Union would supply West Germany with natural gas, and in return, West Germany would provide high-quality steel pipes to extend the pipelines. It was a major 20-year deal. To get how this deal locked Germany in, it's important to understand what makes piped natural gas different from other energy sources. Natural gas with coal and oil is one of the three main fossil fuels used around the world. But unlike coal and oil, which can be shipped or rerouted worldwide, piped natural gas is a regional product that depends on proximity. To transport it, natural gas producers spend millions of dollars to build pipelines that connect producers and buyers. Because these pipelines are such big and permanent commitments, gas deals can link a buyer's energy infrastructure to the sellers for decades.
Yep.
By the 80s, the Soviet Union built this pipeline network to Europe, and by the 90s, it was supplying Germany with 40% of its gas. Then, the Soviet Union collapsed. Russia's state-owned corporation, Gazprom, took over the old Soviet gas pipelines. But the map had been redrawn. Russia's main pipelines now ran through a newly independent Ukraine, putting a key part of their gas infrastructure on land they no longer controlled. So, in order to diversify the routes to Germany, Russia began building new ones. In 1999, they finished this pipeline that ran through Belarus. And in 2005, they began building the Nord Stream pipeline along the Baltic Sea to reach Germany directly.
Which was blown up. So you see this one? The Nord Stream pipeline.
They also built pipelines.
Whoops, sorry. I want to go back a little bit because I want to show you something. More direct route, right?
Nord Stream pipeline along the Baltic Sea to reach
this part right here. So this was a more direct route to go to Germany. So blowing up this pipeline, huge issue, obviously, right? You just cut the pathway, the more direct pathway from Russia to Germany.
Reach Germany directly. They also built pipelines inside Germany and opened a subsidiary there to operate gas storage facilities, including this one here, one of the largest in Western Europe. Russia now had 3 routes reaching Germany, as well as pipelines and storage facilities inside Germany. The gas trade was strong, but it had also changed Russia's relationship with Europe. At the end of 2008, gas price negotiations between Russia and Ukraine fell apart. A few days later, Russia cut off gas to Ukraine for 20 days. The thing is, because Ukraine was a major transit country, when Russia cut off their gas, they cut off a lot of European gas too.
Yep.
As a result, all these countries saw a drop in their supply and tens of thousands lost heat. In Poland, at least 11 people froze to death. All this put Europe on alert. It was now clear that through gas flows, Russia held immense power over Europe.
Do you see how badly European countries depend on Russia? How much they need Russia? You see this?
But up here, another link to Russia was in the works. Nord Stream 2, a new $11 billion pipeline to run alongside the first Nord Stream and double the capacity to Germany. Then in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and invaded eastern Ukraine. In response, the EU issued a series of sanctions. Some countries began to wean themselves off Russia's gas. But Russian gas kept flowing to Germany. In fact, Germany imported more gas than ever before.
Germany depended on this gas from Russia more than any of the other European countries, from what I've read. That's why they may be the most affected this winter.
Today, as Russia's atrocities in Ukraine continue to shock the world, pressure on Germany is mounting. But replacing Russia's gas isn't easy. Because it's been piped to homes and businesses for decades. Without a major infrastructure overhaul, Russian natural gas can only be replaced with other natural gas. And Germany's options for that are limited. The largest European natural gas reserve here in the Netherlands is closing this year. Gas from Algeria and Libya is increasingly used in those countries. Most of what is pumped to Europe goes to Italy and Spain. And a southern gas corridor connecting Azerbaijan to Europe is not transporting as much as expected. The other option is liquefied natural gas, or LNG.
And that's what we talked about earlier in the previous clip. And I'll go ahead and stop the video here because then it gets to the LNG part, which we already discussed earlier. And that's what they wanted their solution to be. But like I said, even with the LNG, they're already telling you that Germany still could end up with the gas shortage this winter and also going into 2026 if they don't find a way to increase that gas supply. If they have a mild winter, for the most part, they'll probably be fine, but you can't bank on that. They could have a cold winter, and then what? So this proxy war is affecting a lot of people, and it's affecting people that actually are just not even involved. And that's the thing. Let me go to Richard Wolff now. We're going to go ahead and bring this in because Richard Wolff talks for a while, and I want to make sure I get all of this in this first clip. So we actually just had our labor summit here at RBN, and we talked to people like Chris Smalls, who started the Amazon Labor Union, the first one in the country. We talked to, at least on my panel, I talked to UPS workers that were explaining like how they really felt in reference to going on strike and taking the deal that they were given. And one of the things that has been very clear to me over time is that while I do think that unions are a good thing, based on what I've seen from the way that these employees have been treated, the rank and file members have been treated by union management, it is very clear to me that you need something else. And the reason why I say that is because how many times do we have to see, whether it's the railroad workers, whether it's the UPS workers, where union management will actually ignore the needs and the wants of the union members and decide to bargain for a lesser deal than what the members actually want? The problem that you run into with unions is that you actually don't own a piece of the company that you work for. So you do have some fighting power, but you have a limited amount of what you can say and what you can do. Professor Richard Wolff has been a strong supporter of unions and worker co-ops. But if you watch his channel, Democracy at Work, he continues to educate people about the importance of worker cooperatives. So I want to get started with this clip here. We're going to start with an older clip first. This one is from, I believe, 3 years ago. And then we're going to go to one of his most recent clips about where he stands on this now. Why unions and worker co-ops should ally.
This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this question comes from Patreon member Daniel Rhodes. And he asks a wonderful question framed as I like them historically. He asks, wouldn't it be a good idea for labor unions here in the United States to follow the example of what labor unions did back in 1919, 100 years ago, when that city experienced a very important general strike? That's when all unions get together, stop everything that's going on in order to make a fundamental change in the society, but at least in the condition of the working class.
So you are going to learn a little bit about history here right now. If you've not heard about this, the general strike of 1919. And I think it's important for people to hear about this. I don't think a lot of people know about the story. I found out about it from one of the Assange activists when I was in DC last year. They actually sent me this information about the general strike of 1919. So let's go ahead and continue here.
Very famous historical example. General strikes were being used around the world at that time to try to demand better conditions for working people, including the veterans of the horrible World War that had just concluded. Let me give you the blunt, clear, short answer that Daniel Rhodes' very good question demands. And the answer is an enthusiastic yes. I don't think labor unions need to wait for the dire conditions like in Seattle in 1919.
Yep.
And they don't have to wait until a general strike is a weapon that they use. They could and they should do it all the time. They should support worker co-ops. Let me remind you also, in case you're not familiar, that in the past, particularly in the 19th century, labor unions in the United States, when they were just getting going, often worked in close coalitions and cooperation with the cooperative movement across the United States.
Did you hear that? So this is the piece, I think, when we talk about labor in this country and we talk about unionization or creating unions, this is the piece that at one point we did have in this country that we no longer have. This piece has to come back. The unions and the worker co-ops should be working together. They should be allies. And that's how you get a stronger fight and you have a united front. And then you can transition into this general strike. Now, I just put the link in the chat so you guys can read this on your own of the Seattle 1919 general strike. Please read that when you get some time because I think it's an interesting history lesson.
Co-ops of farmers, co-ops of industrial workers, and so on. So there's historical precedent as well. But let me give you in conclusion the basic theoretical reason for why worker co-ops and labor unions have the kind of chemical connection that ought to be realized in a real coalition. What do labor unions basically do? They bargain on behalf of their members with the employer, and they try to get for their members better wages, better benefits, better working conditions, greater security of their jobs, and so on, than they could get if each worker bargained with the employer individually. Very simple idea. In union, there is strength and advantage that going it yourself usually does not afford you. So far, so good. But of course, as every union has learned, the employer doesn't sit by idly. The employer has all kinds of mechanisms, maneuvers, advisors, consultants to undermine, block, dissolve, undercut unions. And they've been doing it and doing it successfully for quite a long time.
And I want to also add that some of these union managers are making bank. You have union managers that are making like six figures while other members of the union are not making anywhere near that amount. So sometimes they'll sell out their own members in order to enrich themselves.
Even when unions win in their struggle with the employer, and that happens. They know from bitter experience that no sooner have they won some benefit than the employer goes to work figuring out how to take it back, how to undo it. And that has often been successful to them. Well, then, imagine with me the following wonderful alternative. Suppose workers seeking good jobs, good incomes, job security, and all the rest were bargaining not with somebody else who has opposed interests to the workers, but suppose instead they were bargaining with themselves. If they were the employer, if the workers together were the employers of the workers together. In other words, we were collectively self-employed people. Mm-hmm. If you bargain with yourself, the outcome is usually better than with bargaining with a person whose interests are opposed to yours.
I know that's right. You can say that again. Imagine if more people did this, if we bargained with ourselves instead of bargaining with someone who really is not in favor of the benefits that we're trying to fight for in the first place.
A person who will make more profits, the less is shelled out to the workers needed to generate those profits. Worker co-ops are the conclusion, the ultimate end, the goal, the whole purpose of what labor unions were designed to do.
Yes. This is the way that I always explain this is like, for me, like unions are a great start, right? But the end game should be worker co-ops, because even if you start a union, and yes, you can bargain for certain rights and benefits that you want, you also are subjecting yourself to higher level of management who can also decide like not to bargain with you and not to give you those benefits and rights that you are fighting for. In short, you're working for the company, but you don't own anything. You don't own a piece of it. Whereas when you look at worker co-ops, you not only are working at that company, but you own a piece of the company. So when it comes to benefits and rights and things like that, you actually have a say. So you have a powerful voice. Oftentimes, and I learned this talking to different people that have been fighting these union fights, oftentimes the majority of the members that are part of a union, they actually don't get to sit at the bargaining table when it's time to shoot the breeze. Usually, the union managers are the ones who are sitting at the bargaining table and they sell these people out oftentimes. So it's, yeah, like you have this union and you can fight for certain benefits that you want, but the management in charge can also reject those benefits that you are asking for. Then what do? You have two choices. You go back to work doing what you were doing, or you can go on strike. And if you go on strike, they can still oppose the benefits that you're asking for. Next thing you know, they've replaced you with people who want to be strike breakers. They can replace you with other people who just come right in and do that job that you didn't want to do. And you know what? Also, another thing they'll do sometimes, the people who cross the picket line that take those jobs that you're striking against, oftentimes they'll pay them less than what they were paying you. So now they have found a population to do your job for less. This happens all the time. I see this even with the nurses. The nurses are always going on strike. The teachers are always going on strike. But they actually have like travel nurses that will come into the hospitals and will work while those nurses are on strike. They just replace you because you don't own a piece of it. Now let's see what would happen if you actually owned a piece of it.
If the workers ran the enterprise, they wouldn't bargain to get an improvement with themselves and then turn around and undercut and undermine what they had just won with themselves, from themselves, by themselves. It wouldn't work like that because it makes no sense. Worker co-ops are the way in which workers don't have to bargain with anybody else, when they can together set up the kind of enterprise that will give them the things they need to make a good life for themselves, their children, and their community. It is the logical outcome of what unions were set up to do.
That's right.
It's just a better solution than anything unions can achieve if they remain within the capitalist framework, where they're constantly beset by an employer who has every incentive to undo, even though he's a minority, the needs of his employees, who are the majority in every enterprise. Nothing is more logical than a unification between unions and worker co-ops. And unions now have the funds to facilitate, to help their own members and others build the co-ops and their relationship with unions that could transform the conditions of workers in the United States. This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, with an appreciation of our Patreon community.
Okay. Now, that was Richard Wolff, and that was about 3 years ago. Now, we are going to fast forward to a clip from Richard Wolff that was released on his channel. I think this was like 2 weeks ago. So this is fairly recent, where he dives into the UPS situation, right? And there's something that he says in reference to inflation that I think everybody needs to hear. This is another issue that you run into sometimes if you're just trying to focus on, what can we ask for in reference to a strike, those benefits, right? Let me go ahead and share this clip. This is very important that everybody hears this, because we do have to look at, again, the end game and what is going to happen in the future. So this is Economic Update, today's class struggles with Chris Hedges. The Chris Hedges part is later in this video, but that's not the part we're focusing on today. We're going to focus on this piece here about inflation and going on strike and unions. Listen to this.
Clear. If we have the same rate of inflation over the next 6 years, 5% a year, that we currently have, this 32% will mean they can't afford to buy any more 6 years from now with 32% more than they can buy right now.
Pause. That is very important. So if you're on strike and you're fighting for, let's use the hotel workers in LA that are on strike. They were asking for a $5 raise, right? When I watched the video, it said that most of them were making between $20 to $25 an hour. Now, if we go back and we look at that cost of living report for 2023 in reference to affording housing in this country, state by state, in the state of California, it says that you need to make $42 and some change to afford a 2-bedroom rental in California. When you look at the housing, the rental properties in California on average. So if they're making $20 to $25, $20 to $25 an hour, and they're asking for a $5 raise, let's say they're on the high end and they're making that $25. They get the $5 raise. Now they're making $30 an hour. They're still not making what they should make according to the cost of living report for 2023, which is that $42. So they're still behind. Now they got that raise, but the raise doesn't account for inflation. So you get the $5 raise, and if inflation continues to increase over the years, did you really get a raise? Think about that. Everything else goes up. We know this. We see it. The grocery store prices increase. We've seen gas prices increase. Health insurance premiums go up every year. So did you really get a raise? And this is the point where if you're part of a union, you fought for this and you got it. But what do you do now if you still have inflation? And that's the part where the worker co-op piece would be important. Let me let him continue.
The inflation will eat up And that's a better deal than most Americans are getting. You want to move the working class ahead, which is what the working class wants, you have to get more than 32%. And that means you have to be willing to fight.
That piece right there is especially important. That's the piece that people need to really understand. So I always say, always over ask. Always ask for more than what you actually want. So for those workers, the hotel workers that are asking for that $5 raise, if they want a $5 increase, they should be asking for $10 increase. Always ask for more, because it's not uncommon for those in management to come down a little bit and say, we can meet you here. Always over ask. Always. Now, Richard Wolff is really good on this. Like I said before, if you follow his channel, let me go up here for a second. Democracy at Work.
We've been told time and time again.
Let me pause that there. Sorry. If you follow his channel, Democracy at Work, there's a whole, all of these videos where he talks about.
We've been told time and time.
Okay. He talks about these issues. Let me make it bigger for you so you can see. I'm just going to push this up. I watch Economic Update at least once a week. I usually try to make sure I catch it. But there's just so many. There's a section about global capitalism, and he also tries to bring in the worker issues here too. You'll notice the yellow vest behind him here. And there's the best of Economic Update. Capitalism hits at home. He also does Ask Professor Wolff, but this section here, all things co-op. When you have some time, go check out that section. It's very important, very educational. At least I think so. And I want to show you the Democracy at Work Institute. I want to put this up here because they have a website as well. Here we go. Make this bigger. Everyone has such small font. I don't know this about. I'll make this big for people in the back. Democracy at Work Institute, U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, just in case you're wondering, who is a worker co-op. And it says here you can find examples of established worker co-ops as well as worker cooperative conversions. The U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives and Democracy at Work Institute jointly maintain a directory of active worker co-ops and democratic workplaces in the U.S. It is available on the USFWC website, and I've seen that website as well. But here's some examples. Established worker co-ops, Alvarado Street Bakery, Black Star Co-op Pub and Brewery. That's in Austin, Texas, for you Texans out there. Cooperative Home Care Associates. That's in the Bronx. Equal Exchange. That's right here in Massachusetts. ITHMUS, is it ITHMUS? ITHMUS Engineering and Manufacturing. That's in Madison, Wisconsin. Weaver Street Market. That's in North Carolina. And then there's conversions of existing businesses. Namaste Solar. That's in Boulder, Colorado. Select Machine. Doesn't say where this one is. South Mountain Company. So these are just a few. There are many more, by the way. There are many, many, many more. But there's a whole section here about worker cooperatives. And I want to highlight this section, benefits of worker cooperatives. Let me just dive in here. Worker cooperatives build local wealth. You're keeping the money. This is small. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Now to figure out where I stopped. Sorry about that. Oh. Okay, here we go. Worker cooperatives build local wealth. You're keeping the money within the community. There was a story recently that Richard Wolff covered about a business here in Massachusetts that they had to close. And instead of selling the business to another investor who just wants to make money and continue to gentrify neighborhoods, they sold the business to themselves. So all of the employees bought the small business and they were able to stay in business. That's actually a smart idea. Worker cooperatives build local wealth. They create quality jobs because workers have a meaningful role in the business as they contribute to and benefit from the success of a company they co-own. Worker co-ops create meaningful change for underserved populations. By placing workers' needs ahead of profits, they address the root cause of economic disparity. More than half of worker cooperatives in the U.S. today were designed to improve low-wage jobs and build wealth in communities most directly affected by inequality, helping vulnerable workers build skills and earning potential, household income, and assets. And I want to go ahead and go back to the top here for just a second. I made it all big now, so it's going back to the menu. But there are resources, and this is the page that I want to link you guys to. We go to the resources part. I'm going to put this link in the chat also, so you can look at this on your own time as well. But this website is especially helpful, and there's a plethora of resources here. So you see, startup, they even tell you, look, what is a worker co-op development, the history, startup, conversion, communication. They even give you the legal, the financial, all this information that you need. So the resources are there. But if you have not visited that Democracy at Work Institute, please start there. Definitely check that out. But we need to start asking for more. We really do. We deserve more. Thank you so much for the super chat, Aiden. Thanks for now turning me on to Richard Wolff's content. Seen clips from him, but clearly he has a lot of info to offer. Thank you for the work y'all do. You are welcome, Aiden. And that's the thing too. I think a lot of people, they know of Professor Richard Wolff as like, he's a Marxist and he talks about Marxism, but actually like there's a lot of discussion about the workers there, like on his site and everything. And I think that you just learn so much from him, I think. But that Democracy at Work Institute, I believe I put it in the chat. I thought I did. Now it's gone. Here we go. Yes, institute.coop/resource-guide. Check that out, guys. It's a lot of information. That's why I said when you have time to look over it, check it out. But yeah. What's this, Nancy? Sabby, have you ever heard about transition towns? I have not. You have to let me know about that. I think I have an idea of what that could be. But I just want to show you guys our labor summit, because I want to pull this back up too if you haven't had a chance to see it. I don't know why everything does this sometimes. It's kind of annoying, actually. All right. Sorry, I was talking to myself there. If you go on to our channel, I'm going to share this as well. I know it's it may be kind of lengthy, but when you get a chance, if you didn't see the Labor Summit, please check it out because there's so much information. So there were two parts. Part one featured Chris Smalls, and part two featured Shama Sawant. So we did talk to a lot of people, actually. But I talked to the UPS workers, but it's right there on the homepage if you haven't had a chance to see it. So check that out. And also not just Richard Wolff, but Marco, who you've probably seen in the chat here every now and then. He was also on RBN recently. I think with CJ and Nick, or either with Nick, one of them. But Marco actually started a worker co-op. So he's been on my show to talk about how to start a worker co-op. You know, he's a plethora of knowledge. He started a tech worker co-op. But there's all different types that you can do. And I think it's just a lot of people just need the resources and the information. And that's why I said, please check out that website because they give you all the resources and information that you need there, as well as the legal information, which sometimes people do not do. Let's keep it real. JB's in the chat said, I talked about disabled workers. That's right. You did. That was JB's panel. And disabled workers is a thing. People think that sometimes if someone's disabled, that means they can't work. Not necessarily. I mean, my dad's disabled, but my dad is still able to work. My mom is disabled, but my mom is not able to work. So I think the thing is like there's a whole different, it's a whole different ball game for people who are disabled, but they're not considered to be disabled enough so that they can't work. So they still do have to work. They have to deal with a whole different onset of like issues, just FYI. And JB covered that. But that is it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Boop, 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 boop. If you want more Sabby, I'll be live again actually tonight on my channel in about 1 hour. I'm going to cover some news, and I'll dive into that Jimmy Dore, Marianne Williamson interview over there because I know it was already discussed here on RBN. So I'll dive into that over there because I have some things to say. Other than that, guys, share those resources, share those links, share that information with people so they can learn more about worker co-ops. Other than that, have a good night. Keep up the fight.